All right, buckle up because we are diving deep into the world of Intel today.
Oh, Intel.
You know them, you probably use their processors, but their journey from a memory chip maker to a titan grappling with self-driving cars and accusations of antitrust violations,
Yeah.
that's a story that needs some unpacking, don't you think?
It's a classic tale of a company's evolution, and honestly, it makes you question if they can keep dominating the tech world like they used to.
Interesting.
You sent over their Wikipedia page, and let me tell you, it's a wild ride through tech history.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock.
Oh.
How did Intel go from memory chips to being synonymous with the brains of our computers?
Yeah.
It's not exactly a straight line, is it?
That's what's so fascinating. In the 70s, they were the memory chip kings, churning out DRAM and SRAM like nobody's business.
Wow.
And here's the kicker, that expertise wasn't just a stepping stone, it was foundational.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for me.
Think about it. Those early chips taught Intel about miniaturization,
Okay.
about cramming more and more power into smaller and smaller spaces,
Right.
and doing it efficiently. Those lessons became their secret weapon when the microprocessor revolution kicked off. They were already masters of the tiny.
So they were in the right place at the right time, but with the right skills, too. It's like they were training for the tech revolution without even knowing it.
Exactly. And speaking of revolution, let's talk about Intel Inside. That marketing campaign in the 90s was genius.
Oh, yeah.
They convinced us to care about what chip was running our computer, not just the brand on the outside.
Genius is right. I remember those stickers everywhere. You're saying they made the chip a status symbol? That's marketing gold.
It's branding brilliance. They went from a behind-the-scenes player to a household name.
Totally.
But here's where it gets interesting. They're shifting gears now, simplifying their branding, even retiring iconic names like Pentium and Celeron. What do you make of that?
It's like they're saying, we're Intel, you know us, trust us.
Right.
They don't need the fancy sub-brands anymore. It's a power move for sure. But speaking of power moves, Intel's pushing into self-driving cars. Now that's a curveball.
It's a bold bet on the future, and it makes perfect sense when you connect the dots. They're not just about PCs anymore. They're about anything that needs serious processing power, data analysis, sensors. Autonomous vehicles are a natural fit.
So they're leveraging their strengths in a completely new arena.
Right.
It's not just about building chips, it's about building the brains of the future.
Exactly. But this isn't some random side quest for Intel. They're going all in. They even acquired Mobileye back in 2017, a company specializing in vision technology for autonomous vehicles.
So they're not just dipping their toes in, they're diving headfirst into the deep end of self-driving tech. But it's a crowded pool, isn't it?
It's a high-stakes race, and Intel's facing some serious competition. But let's be real, they've been through their share of battles. Some they've won, some they've learned from. Remember their attempt to take on the mobile processor market?
Vaguely. That didn't exactly set the world on fire, did it?
It didn't. Their Medfield chip was a valiant effort, but the mobile landscape shifted hard towards ARM processors, and Intel couldn't quite catch the wave.
So what did they learn from that stumble? Because they always seem to come back swinging.
That's the mark of a true tech player. They adapt. They learn. Their current CEO, Pat Gelsinger, has been vocal about learning from past missteps, especially their struggles with the 10-nanometer manufacturing process.
Okay, 10 nanometer, break that down for me. Why was that such a big deal?
In the simplest terms, it's about making chips smaller and more powerful.
Okay.
Intel hit a roadblock, and that delay, those manufacturing hiccups, gave their rivals an opening, especially AMD. They came back swinging with their Zen architecture, and suddenly, Intel wasn't the only game in town for high-performance computing.
It's like they took their eye off the ball for a second and AMD seized the moment.
Precisely. And it wasn't just AMD. Apple's decision to ditch Intel and use their own Apple silicon processors sent shockwaves through the industry.
Okay, I'll admit, I was impressed by Apple's chips.
Yeah.
It's like they said, hey, Intel, thanks for the ride. We'll take it from here.
It was a bold statement. And while Apple wasn't a huge chunk of Intel's business, it proved that their dominance wasn't untouchable. Suddenly, other companies might be thinking, if Apple can do it, maybe we can too.
That's got to keep Intel up at night.
Yeah, I know.
So how are they responding to all this pressure?
Gelsinger came in swinging with a plan he calls IDM 2.0.
Okay.
It's a complete overhaul of how Intel operates, a multi-pronged attack on the challenges they're facing.
Okay, let's unpack IDM 2.0. What's the game plan?
First, they're investing billions in new manufacturing facilities. We're talking Arizona, Ohio, even Germany.
Wow.
They want to control the most advanced chip making in-house, less reliance on outside foundries, and regain that manufacturing edge.
So it's about taking back control of their destiny?
Right.
But here's where I get confused. Their Wikipedia page mentions using external foundries, too. Isn't that contradictory?
It's about strategic flexibility.
Okay.
They want to own the cutting-edge stuff.
Right.
But for certain products or to meet massive demand, tapping into specialized foundries like TSMC makes sense.
So it's like having your own bakery, but partnering with other bakeries for specific cakes.
Exactly. But here's the real plot twist of IDM 2.0. They're reviving their foundry business.
What?
But this time, they're not just making chips for other companies, they're offering up their own technology and intellectual property.
Hold on, they're sharing their secret sauce.
I know, right?
What's the angle there?
It's a bold play to generate new revenue and stay relevant in a cutthroat market.
Okay.
The recent chip shortage showed everyone how critical this is, and Intel wants to be the go-to source for secure, high-quality chips.
So they're basically saying, need chips, we're the best, come to us. That's a gutsy move, going head-to-head with giants like TSMC.
It's a David versus Goliath scenario.
Yeah.
But don't underestimate Intel. They've been both David and Goliath at different points in their history. They've got the experience, the resources, and now a new strategy.
This is already making my head spin, and we've just scratched the surface of their recent moves. What else have they been up to?
Well, they haven't shied away from strategic acquisitions.
Oh, really?
Particularly one that plays right into their self-driving car ambitions.
Okay, don't tell me they bought Tesla.
No.
Okay.
Not quite. But they did acquire Mobileye back in 2017, a company specializing in vision technology for autonomous vehicles.
Okay, so maybe not the whole car, but a critical part of it. What did Mobileye bring to the table?
They're the eyes of the self-driving operation. They specialize in computer vision and sensor technology, exactly what Intel needs to be a serious player in that world.
So they're building up their arsenal, but they're not just after self-driving cars, right? They got their fingers in a lot of pies.
They're diversifying like crazy. They also acquired Altera.
Altera, okay.
A company that makes FPGAs, which are like the Swiss Army knives of chips.
FPGAs, those are. Help me out here.
Imagine a chip that can be programmed and reprogrammed for specific tasks.
Right.
Super versatile. They're perfect for data centers, networking equipment, even AI applications.
So instead of one-size-fits-all processors, they're offering specialized solutions. That's pretty smart, right?
It's all about staying ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
They want to be the go-to for any and all computing needs, from your phone to your car to that smart refrigerator you've got your eye on. Intel
Inside my fridge. Now that's a future I can get behind. But let's be real, we can't talk about Intel without addressing the elephant in the room. Those antitrust lawsuits.
Ah, yes, those. They've had their share of legal battles over the years, accusations of playing dirty to stay on top of the processor game.
Okay, spill the tea. What exactly did they do that landed them in hot water?
There have been accusations of offering exclusive deals to computer manufacturers, basically paying them to use only Intel processors and ditch competitors like AMD.
That sounds, well, a little shady, to be honest.
It's a gray area. Sure, companies want to secure market share,
Right.
and discounts for big clients are common. But when you're as dominant as Intel was, those deals can stifle competition and hurt consumers in the long run.
So what was the fallout from these lawsuits?
They've had to pay some hefty fines. The European Union slapped them with a record $1.45 billion penalty in 2009.
Wow.
And they've settled lawsuits with AMD for billions more.
Ouch, that's got to sting. It makes you wonder if those aggressive tactics were worth the cost in the end.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Those lawsuits forced Intel to reevaluate their playbook, be more careful about how they deal with manufacturers and compete. They got a wake-up call that even tech giants aren't above the law.
It's a good reminder that with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
But it's not just legal issues they've faced. What about their environmental impact? Making millions of chips can't be good for the planet.
You've hit on a critical point. Electronics manufacturing has a dark side. But to Intel's credit, they're making efforts to clean up their act.
So they're not just cranking out chips and ignoring the environmental cost.
One of their biggest moves has been committing to conflict-free sourcing of their materials, especially those used in their processors.
Conflict-free. What does that even mean for a chip?
It's about ensuring that the raw materials,
All right.
particularly precious metals like tantalum, tin, tungsten, and gold, aren't sourced from mines that fund armed conflicts, especially in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Wow, I had no idea those materials were in my laptop.
They're essential for many electronics, but tragically, their mining has been linked to human rights abuses and violence, and Intel's trying to break that link.
So they're working to make sure their chips aren't contributing to those horrific situations. That's huge.
It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
They're tracing their supply chains, auditing suppliers, and working with industry groups to promote responsible sourcing.
That's got to be a logistical nightmare, right?
It's not easy, but they're putting in the effort. They've published detailed reports on their progress, and they're being transparent about the challenges they face.
Transparency is key. It's good to know they're not just paying lip service to this. But what about their own factories? Those are notorious for pollution and energy consumption.
They can be, but Intel's working on that too. They've set targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, conserve water, and use more renewable energy. It's a work in progress, but they're moving in the right direction.
That's reassuring. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Memory chips, processors, marketing, antitrust issues, even their environmental efforts. What else is there to Intel's story?
We've only just scratched the surface. We haven't even touched on their social impact initiatives, their push for diversity in tech, or their work in promoting STEM education.
Wow, so they're not just a tech company. They're trying to be a force for good in the world.
It certainly seems that way. They're putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to social responsibility. But the question remains, can they maintain their position as a leader in the ever-evolving world of tech? That's what we'll explore next.
All right, cliffhanger, you've got me hooked.
Yeah!
We'll be right back after a quick break to delve deeper into the future of Intel.
It's fascinating to watch them navigate this new landscape where they're not just supplying the building blocks of technology, but actually shaping its direction.
It's like they're going from bricklayer to architect, right?
Precisely. And that comes with a whole new world of challenges.
Like what are some of the biggest hurdles in front of Intel today?
Well, for one, the competition is hungrier than ever.
Yeah.
AMD's comeback has been remarkable, putting real pressure on Intel across the board.
Right.
Then you've got NVIDIA dominating the graphics processing unit market, and ARM, whose energy-efficient designs are everywhere in mobile devices.
We'll talk about a tight race. And then there's the whole geopolitical landscape on top of that, right? I know there's been a lot of talk about semiconductors being crucial for global trade and even national security.
Right.
How does that play into Intel's strategy?
It's a huge factor. Semiconductors have become absolutely essential to modern economies.
Right.
And governments around the world are realizing how strategically important they are.
Yeah.
The recent chip shortage really drove that point home.
That's right.
When supply chain issues sent shockwaves through everything from cars to phones.
So it's not just about making the best chips anymore.
Yeah.
It's about where they're made and who has access to them.
Exactly. We're seeing a rise in what some are calling tech nationalism,
Okay.
where countries want to secure their own domestic chip manufacturing. This is partly driven by those supply chain worries we talked about,
Right.
but also by growing geopolitical competition.
I see. So for Intel, that means...
It means walking a tightrope. They need to balance their global manufacturing with the demands of different governments,
Right.
ensuring a steady supply of chips for their customers worldwide,
Yeah.
while addressing concerns about national security
Right.
and protecting their intellectual property.
That sounds like a juggling act worthy of a circus.
Yeah.
How are they managing all of that?
Remember their IDM 2.0 strategy?
Yeah.
Part of that is strategically expanding their manufacturing in key regions like the US and Europe.
Okay.
This lets them cater to different markets
I see.
while keeping governments happy who want more chip production on their own soil.
So it's a bit like hedging their bets geographically.
You could say that.
Okay.
It's about diversifying their manufacturing base and not putting all their eggs in one basket,
Makes sense.
which is a smart move in the current global climate.
Right.
But it also means navigating a maze of regulations
Yeah.
and potentially making concessions to different governments.
I bet that involves a lot of diplomacy and late-night negotiations.
Absolutely. It's a delicate dance, and Intel has to be very strategic. They need to keep those government relationships strong while still looking out for their own interests.
Like a high-stakes chess game being played on a global scale.
A very apt analogy.
Yeah.
And the stakes just keep getting higher as competition heats up and the geopolitical landscape gets more complex.
Okay, let's zoom in a bit and talk about something closer to home. Intel's processors.
Huh?
They've been the kings of the PC market for ages.
Yeah.
But how are they adapting to what consumers need today?
That's the million-dollar question.
That-
The way we use computers has changed drastically,
It has.
and Intel's had to change with it.
Right. It's not just about raw processing power anymore, is it?
Not at all. Consumers want processors that are not only powerful, but
Yeah.
also energy efficient,
Okay.
secure,
Right.
and capable of juggling all sorts of tasks,
Yes.
from gaming and creating content to even artificial intelligence.
So it's a balancing act between pure performance and efficiency.
You got it.
That's why they've developed different processor lines for different needs.
Right.
Their Atom processors, for example, are designed for low-power devices like tablets and smartphones,
Okay.
while their Xeon chips are built for the heavy lifting you see in data centers.
And then there's the Core series,
Right.
which is what most people probably think of when they hear Intel.
Yeah.
How are those evolving?
Intel's been pushing the boundaries of processor design with their Core series.
Okay.
They've introduced innovations like hyperthreading, which lets a single processor core handle multiple things at once,
Right.
and Turbo Boost, which dynamically adjusts processing speeds to maximize performance.
So they're always trying to squeeze more juice out of their chips.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been shrinking those transistors down to almost impossibly tiny sizes,
Yeah.
which lets them cram even more processing power onto a single chip.
Right.
This miniaturization process is known as Moore's Law,
Right.
and it's been the engine of the semiconductor industry for decades.
But keeping up that pace is getting harder and harder.
Right. You mentioned their struggles with the 10-nanometer manufacturing process earlier.
Yeah,
Did they ever get past those hurdles?
they did. It took longer than they planned,
Okay.
but they eventually got those 10-nanometer chips out the door,
Right.
and they're already knee-deep in developing even smaller and more advanced manufacturing processes,
Right.
like 7-nanometer and even 4-nanometer technologies.
So they're still in that race to build the smallest, most powerful chips on the planet.
Absolutely. But it's a tight race.
Yeah.
And companies like TSMC are right there with them, constantly pushing the limits of what's possible.
It's mind-blowing when you think about how far we've come.
It is.
I mean, the phone I'm holding has more processing power than the computers that sent us to the moon.
It really is incredible. And this is just the beginning.
Wow.
Intel and their competitors are constantly pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
And the next generation of processors is going to be even faster, more efficient, and capable of things we haven't even imagined.
It's exciting and a little daunting at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about their history, their current challenges, their manufacturing strategy, and their processors.
Right.
What else haven't we covered yet?
We touched on their foray into self-driving cars,
Right.
but we haven't really explored their other bets on the future of technology.
Oh, right. What else are they pouring resources into?
One area they're placing big bets on is artificial intelligence.
Okay.
AI is everywhere these days.
It is.
And Intel wants to be a major player.
AI, it seems like that's the buzzword on everyone's lips these days.
It is.
How is Intel getting involved?
They're coming at it from all angles.
Okay.
They're developing specialized hardware,
Okay.
like their Loihi neuromorphic chip, which is designed to actually mimic the human brain.
A chip that thinks like us. Now, that sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It's cutting-edge stuff.
Yeah.
The goal is to create processors specifically designed for AI workloads like machine learning and deep learning, which are becoming critical for things like image recognition, natural language processing, and yes, even those self-driving systems we were talking about.
So they're betting big on AI being a game changer in the future of computing.
They are. And they're not alone.
Right.
Every major tech company is pouring resources into AI.
Yeah.
They recognize the potential for it to revolutionize just about every industry.
It makes sense. AI is already changing how we live and work, and it's only going to become more prevalent in the years to come.
Absolutely.
What other futuristic tech is on Intel's radar?
They're also looking into things like quantum computing,
Okay.
which could completely transform fields like drug discovery, material science, and cryptography.
Wow.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Quantum computing. Okay, that's
Hey.
one of those things I know I should understand, but it always seems a bit like magic to me.
It's definitely mind-bending stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, it uses the principles of quantum mechanics to perform calculations that would take traditional computers millions of years to... It's still early days,
Okay.
but the potential is enormous.
And Intel wants to be at the forefront of that potential.
Absolutely. They're investing in research and development, trying to position themselves as leaders in this game-changing technology.
It's amazing to think about how far they've come. From humble beginnings as a memory chip maker to diving headfirst into AI, quantum computing, self-driving cars. Intel's ambition seems limitless.
It really does.
Yeah.
They're not content with just keeping up.
Right.
They want to define the future of technology.
Right.
But there's another side to this story that we need to address.
Okay.
One that often gets overlooked.
Oh, and what's that?
The human cost of technology.
That's a heavy one, but incredibly important.
Yeah.
What do we need to be thinking about? You're right. We often get so caught up in the excitement of new technology that we forget to ask the tough questions. What's the human cost? What are the unintended consequences?
It's easy to get swept away by the possibilities, but we have a responsibility to consider the ethical implications of these advancements, especially as technologies like AI become more powerful and pervasive.
It's like we're standing on the edge of uncharted territory, and we need to be mindful of the potential pitfalls. Where do we even begin to unpack something this complex?
Well, for starters, we can look at the issue of bias in AI. Algorithms are only as good as the data they're trained on, and if that data reflects existing societal biases, the AI systems will perpetuate and even amplify those biases.
So we could end up with AI that discriminates against certain groups of people, even if that wasn't the intention of the developers.
Exactly. It's already happening in areas like facial recognition, loan applications, and even criminal justice. If we're not careful, we risk creating a future where AI reinforces existing inequalities.
That's a sobering thought. What can be done to address this?
It starts with acknowledging the problem and being intentional about creating more diverse and inclusive data sets. We also need greater transparency in how these algorithms are designed and trained so that we can identify and mitigate bias.
It sounds like we need more ethicists and social scientists at the table alongside the engineers and coders.
Absolutely. We need diverse perspectives and interdisciplinary collaboration to ensure that these technologies are developed and deployed responsibly.
It's a heavy responsibility, but it's one that Intel and other tech giants can't afford to ignore.
They hold a tremendous amount of power, and with that power comes a responsibility to consider the broader societal impact of their creations.
It's like the old Spider-Man adage. With great power comes great responsibility. It's more relevant than ever in the age of AI, self-driving cars, and quantum computing.
It's a good reminder that technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. It's up to us, collectively, to ensure that it's used to create a more just and equitable future for all.
Those are wise words to end on. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Intel, from their humble beginnings as a memory chip maker to their current position as a tech titan, grappling with the challenges and opportunities of a rapidly changing world. It's been a fascinating look at a company that shaped so much of our technological landscape and continues to push the boundaries of what's possible.
Absolutely. And it underscores the importance of not just understanding how technology works, but also considering its impact on society and holding those who create it accountable.
Well said. And to our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Intel.
Keep asking those tough questions.
Keep exploring.
And until next time,
Keep diving deep.